some people pick up crochet. You decided, oh, just for fun, I'm going to dabble in some real estate.
It was probably a couple years out of college. I'm paying rent that I could be putting into a mortgage. So I'm just thinking, hey, my money could be going to something else. I can own it. And so I was like, okay, let's just keep doing this.
You mentioned you feel like women and people of color are not engaged in the way they should. Why do you think that is?
My mom used to tell me, you got to work harder than the white man. And for me as a kid, that was like, am I missing something? Am I lacking something? But it makes you feel like you have to put in that extra work when you're equal.
How did you find managing those properties though? Because I know that it can be met with some challenges.
My life could have been gone. Being in the moment of having two men in your home, being held at gunpoint, being tied up and locked into a closet and figuring out how, am I gonna live? I was praying and I kept my mind in a space of, I'm gonna make it through this. But in that moment, it was just like, all right, God, it's on you.
Today, we're going to talk to a Fortune 100 executive who had real estate as a hobby and has now turned it into a career. She currently manages $40 million in real estate investments and is paying it forward by sharing what she's learned. I'm honored to introduce Tari Thomas.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I love
Tari
being here.
Welcome to the Brink. How do you feel?
I feel good. Thank you for inviting me into your space.
Did you ever think that you were on the brink?
Did I ever think that I was on the brink? I've probably been on the brink 1,000,001 times, but...
and we're going to cover some of that.
Yeah, amen.
So just to get started, for anybody that doesn't know you, because I think it's so inspiring what you were doing before. I met you in a previous life, and so I've seen you through all your phases, and so sometimes when you're living it, you don't see it.
That part.
Yeah. So what were you doing before you discovered real estate?
Yeah, I mean, I moved out to the Arizona area. I was recruited out here, got the engineering degree and all the things. And so moved out to Arizona right after college and was doing engineering and then got into project management. I was doing supply chain, leading multi-million-dollar supply chain projects, leading, autonomous driving vehicles, launching it to market with 100+ people teams from a project management standpoint. And so just really leading large scale projects across the globe.
Some might say you were an adult babysitter.
You could say that. I mean, there's so many elements to it, to bring all these different people from different kind of segments together to all swim in the same direction to hit the goals that you're trying to hit. So
I think project management is one of the hardest jobs that is out there.
It is definitely challenging.
It does not get its props the way it should.
It doesn't.
And they're like, oh, she's coming to tell me I'm late on my deadline.
Right. But beyond that, just really helping people to see the goal, understanding enough about everyone's space. You got to know enough. It's just not just like keeping task to, it's really understanding enough about everyone's world to say, how am I going to move these people all towards getting this thing across the line? So some people pick up crochet. You decided, oh, just for fun, I'm going to dabble in some real estate. And you did it at a very early age. So can you talk about that and how that came to be? Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about picking it up as a hobby. It was just kind of, I'm paying rent, and it was probably a couple years out of college. I'm paying rent that I could be putting into a mortgage, and my mom was just super frugal. She's a Jamaican woman, so it was. She was very frugal as a kid. So I'm just thinking, hey, my money could be going to something else. I can own it.
Right.
So I moved to the hood of Arizona just to save up enough for down payment, and bought my first house. And I don't want to date myself, but probably at 24. I bought my first house.
Did you really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then when I did that, $3,000 down, I didn't have much credit, did it FHA loan. And I was like, wow. And I immediately had equity. I moved to Levine, which was at that point was like, there was nothing out there. And it was like, wow, I just like doubled my money. Like I put very little down, right? And so I was like, okay, let's just keep doing this. And every 2 years, and really turned into like every year I was buying a house up until about the Great Recession time period.
Wow. So at that point, how many houses had you amassed?
I had about 4 houses, and that was only for over 4 years, and a piece of land that I had purchased.
And how did you find managing those properties though? Because I know that it can be met with some challenges.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess I didn't see the challenges at the time. I was putting people in my rooms to be able to have enough money to buy the next one. And
they were
afford.
living with you?
Yes, they were living with me.
Wow.
So yeah, one person in my house, and I was young, So, and then some two I bought out of state that were in the Katrina area. So right after kind of Katrina happened, I bought a couple properties in the Baton Rouge area and just
that is wild.
was flipping that, and then ended up managing, being a long distance, kind of a remote landlord, and managing a couple properties long distance.
I think people would find that intimidating. Can you talk about some of the tricks of the trade that you found helpful for someone that thinks, I think a lot of people that, stock market is a gamble, but it's really easy to do. You can do it from an app.
Right.
Real estate feels a lot harder. It
Yeah.
seems like there's a barrier to entry. What would you tell people that think that?
I don't think there's a barrier to entry. I didn't really know much. I just started learning on the fly, right? And this is before there was YouTube videos. You were mailing to get books or like pamphlets. Hey, this is how you do X, Y, and Z. But, from afar, I say anybody who's managing properties from afar, you need boots on the ground. You need someone who understands that market and has your back. I made mistakes, had people, but I had to make decisions to switch to, okay, this is not working. They have no clue what they're doing. They have, vendors and contractors in my house that are like doing poor work, right? And so I finally got someone, that came referred, and she completely changed the game. And so sometimes you can't be afraid to make a pivot, as we all know, like when we're pivoting careers or pivoting, we're so afraid of what's on the other side, but we know it sucks where we are. And so we know what we're in, if that makes any sense. But it's like, I don't know what I'm getting. And we just gotta, it's almost like you gotta pivot, and you gotta just trust your gut that I've got to make this shift. I've got to make this change. And all of those changes that I've made in real estate have been just really good, really, really good. It's always led to something better.
Did your age, especially in the early days, play a role? Did people kind of discount you or maybe not take you seriously?
I would say no. I mean, I was doing the career, right? Like, so I was in real estate, in engineering, and then I was doing a lot of stuff individually. So it was kind of like I was playing my own game. It didn't matter. I think now when I'm in a space where, when you're in the commercial real estate, private fund space, it involves a lot more people. It involves a team. So I think that's more of a space where you're like, okay, do people know what I bring to the table? Because of all of the small hits, right? Like these are base hits, maybe, I got to second base on these, smaller deals and things like that. But all of that helped me to do what I do now. So.
And you said you made some mistakes along the way. Can you share some of your biggest mistakes?
Whew. Man. I would say I tried to invest in Costa Rica. Loved Costa Rica, was traveling there for work. And at the time, this was right before like around the Great Recession time period. I didn't speak the language. The documentation was in Spanish. My partner that I was with, it was one of his friends. And I, in my gut and in my spirit, it was like, you should be doing more due diligence. And I was so eager because at this point I had been, and this is probably an at the brink moment, right? I had been laid off in 2006 and entered kind of what I call one of the best year of my life and the worst year of my life, in the sense of just a lot of different things happening. And so I think I was way too eager that I needed to make something happen. And at the time I'm still in my 20s, right? And I'd saved up about 50 grand, which at that time,
a lot of money
saving,
in your
yeah.
20s.
And I was about 5 properties that we were putting down payments on, and just my gut was just like, this isn't, but I had already put my money down. And so, 50 grand of liquid cash just kind of gone. And, they were like, oh, you should continue to move forward down this pathway. And, you flip it to investors in the US. And I just was like, I'm not going to bring other people. My integrity wouldn't let me do it. I'm not going to bring other people and flip them a problem I don't want to have. So,
right.
So I just took the L, fell on my sword, and now I use that to really like, okay, I got to know who I'm getting in bed with, right? That's really.
And you
important.
said that was a friend though. So how did that?
It wasn't a friend. It was a friend's person, right?
Okay.
Like they had done something together. So I didn't per se know that individual. And so I should have done more due diligence on that end of it.
So you continued doing this though while you were working full time?
Right. And so that year, when all of these things were transferred, I had taken a break, and then I'd gone back to the company that I was working for, and then just continue to do it on the side.
But they eventually grew into something more. You felt a calling to do something else. I think when I look at your story, you got the entrepreneurship bug, or maybe you always had it.
I've had it since childhood. I used to sell candy and then throw parties in high school. And so always trying to figure out some way to make money. I think the shift for me was right before a layoff, right? Like it shifted me into kind of going into entrepreneurship. I had already wanted to do it, and my sister kind of pumped my brakes because of some things that she was dealing with from a story standpoint, her whole family life standpoint. And the beauty of that is that it paused me from kind of stepping into startup. But I had some ideas while she was living with me and kind of going through her own journey. I was looking for my next kind of step in real estate. It was like, okay, I got the single family thing. I got the rehab thing down. Like, what's kind of my next step? I was looking at development and different things, but I was also trying to pair that with some of the loves that I have. I work a lot with youth, and, how can I like mix my passions? And my sister had said, I'm so grateful to have had you, to have a space to come to, because she was going through her nursing degree program. And she was just like, there's not a lot of nurses, they're dropping out because they don't have that safety of home. They don't have that, this space where they can like rest assured that they have somewhere to lay their head and be able to like just focus on school. And so that kind of clicked for me. It was like, well, I'm a single woman. I have extra space in my home. How do other people do this, right?
Can I scale this?
Yeah, well, and how do I, yeah, exactly. And it was just kind of an aha moment of like, well, what if other people did what I did, right? What if other people would open up their spaces and provide someone a room? So when I left corporate, I went to start that business, and from nothing. So it was just like, all right, we got an idea here. Like, where do we go? And so that kind of led me down the path of just starting There's Room, which is really a co-living spaces, pairing people houses that, people can have a safe, affordable place to live. And we're filling these rooms, with people that need the space. And you've seen what Arizona's done. I mean, the market kind of just...
That's actually what I was just going to mention. It's become almost unaffordable, not just here,
overnight,
but everywhere.
Like, rents doubled in the span of 5 years. And so it just became, and that was early on. I could see that it was heading in that direction. And so I'd scaled that from nothing to 22 properties, 60 tenants, probably served about 200 or so tenants in that space. And then that's when I kind of triggered me into the syndication space, which is kind of private fund deals. A lot of what people don't really hear about. I got to a space, another at the brink, I guess. I tell you, there's multiple moments, right, where you're just like, you've got to learn to just like pivot fast. And so I had so many properties, and it was just like if the rents keep jumping the way they are, not only is my balance sheet going to get too heavy, but these people, I can't push the rents more. It just is not going to make sense for the mission that I wanted to have. And so I said, I got to own it, right? Like I got to own these houses. And someone I'd stumbled on, invited me to a conference, and I learned about this syndication space. And I'm like, I've been in real estate for 15 years, and I didn't know that you could own commercial spaces, build, the multifamily buildings, these commercial assets. I didn't know you could own it by yourself and with not as much, knowing how to do it as a group and as a syndication. And so that kind of triggered me and kind of flipped the script. And when I saw that there weren't enough women and minorities in those spaces, it was like, there's business professionals who came from the same spaces that I've came from, and this is available for them, and they don't even know that it's possible for them.
So I think a lot of people don't know about what a syndicate is.
Yeah.
When you're talking to someone and explaining what it is, how do you break it down for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's like fractional investing, right? Like, so you think about, everybody's like, oh yeah, I would love to own a retail building, right? But it's too much for me. So they completely dismiss it, right? Because it's too much. Well, private equity is a bunch of people that have come together and they've raised money privately from different investors to go purchase that building, and they share in the returns, the greater returns of that thing. And so it's really, you're just understanding the collective power that you have when you come together as a group to be able to purchase assets that make greater returns than your traditional public market type of investments.
Some of the issues you had in Costa Rica, though, you could possibly have in a syndication, right?
Absolutely.
So
for sure.
how, when you're talking to people, how do they know if something is worth investing in?
Yeah, that's good. No, that's a very good question. Well, one of the things that I teach is just teaching people how vetting a deal, right? It's not only the deal that you're vetting, you're also vetting the operator, who's behind the deal. I believe there has to be some values alignment there. You need to, number one, understand what your goals are. What is it that you're really looking for? Are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for equity? Are you looking to abate taxes? And really, is this deal lining up? That's first, number one. Hey, is this something I should even consider? And then who's the people behind the deal? Because they could run it into the ground. And that's kind of to the point of like the Costa Rica deal. It was like, oh, people can put on a show, but you really need to get into the weeds and really ask questions. So I give people like these kind of a 25 questions list. These are the questions you should be asking your operator to make sure if they line up with what you line up. What's their track record? How long have they been in the game? You know, what are the mistakes they have? Like if everybody says like everything's gone perfectly, okay, you either like are lying to me or, so I ask about what's the worst deal you've done? How did you handle it? Like, I want to know how you worked through that, right? Did you return people back their money? Did you pivot? What did you do? Because for me, it's not about, I know mistakes are going to happen. It's about how you handle the mistakes along the way, right? And if you know how to pivot effectively, then you'll always be learning from the lessons that come along. So
you mentioned you feel like women and people of color are not engaged in the way they should. Why do you think that is?
I think we just discount it, right? Like I think men, number one, are given more of a pass somewhat, if that makes any sense. It's like you feel like when you step in a space, you have to bring more to the table. My mom used to tell me, you got to work harder than the white man. And for me as a kid, that was like, am I missing something? Am I lacking something? Right? So I did work harder. And it wasn't really until I got to college that I was like, and everybody was looking to me as a source to get homework information. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm on the same level as these people, right? And it's so, but it makes you feel like you have to put in that extra work when you're equal. Like these are my equals, right? And so it's an unlearning that you have to do to, and sometimes you don't even realize that you're operating in that space, if that makes any sense, right? It's just kind of unspoken things, unconscious biases and unconscious kind of thinking that you have. And so it's just reminding them like a mistake to a female and a mistake to a male is like completely different, right? Theirs is like, okay, yeah, this is what happens. And to us, sometimes we take it as like a knock against ourselves, right? And it's like, no, this is part of just keep moving. Like right. This is part of the journey. And so I think we just show up differently, but I think we just need to be given permission. So for me, the biggest thing is to expose people to the space. You've never seen it. Here it is, and it's possible for you, right? So expose them, educate them, and then bring opportunities that make sense for them to invest in. And
so are you being intentional about your engagement of different groups?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I just literally had an event of 55 beautiful, powerful women. And the funny thing is that even when we're powerful, it's like there was conversations that I had of like rock star women, and still like, well, I don't want to brag too much, like not a problem for me, right? It's like a shame that we carry and things like that we can't fully show up in a room. So it's always beautiful to bring people who are ambitious and wired the same way, say, yeah, we have full permission to show up exactly as who we are. We don't need the titles. We don't need anyone to validate us. We don't need a attaboy on the shoulder. Like, if you see it for yourself, let's go get it. And it's possible. And really just helping people to navigate that space and just really being in the space. And I'm an observer, like watching people and just like, wow, they are a big name and people probably think they're phenomenal, but they're not doing all the things they could be doing. They're not bringing, at the best returns. And so I think women and minorities, if they know what they're doing, like they're gonna bring slightly better returns to the table. Like if you look at just men and women results, and I'm not knocking men because men bring good results to the table, but they're a little bit more risk adverse, but they overall bring better returns when you look at them from an investment standpoint. So it's just, I think, you're working through just getting people over kind of some of the preconceived notions that they had just growing up in kind of the space we are.
And so you've turned this into a full-time job?
Essentially, it is a business now for me. And so the education piece, having a club where we can look at investments together and review deals together as a group. I think there's confidence and there's accountability in a group. And it just helps us you're not alone in this, right? A lot of people, they don't know and they're just like, nobody else is doing it. So they don't see themselves in that space. And so they just, go off and just never do it. So I'm just really creating an environment where people can feel comfortable to invest and review deals together and really get the tools to be able to do that.
This sounds way better than book club. What does reviewing deals look like?
Whew. Well, I mean, we're going through a whole deck, right? Like, so every operator is gonna give you the pro forma and, hey, what's this market look like? And what's our track record and all the things. And so you're reviewing through it and you're asking your questions and you're vetting this particular.
And you're doing this with the group?
Yeah, we're doing it with the group. So
wow.
We'll either have them come in and present and then we're asking questions. And then we'll also have time to just review it ourselves and say, hey, what are the questions we have about this deal? Understanding kind of the numbers and, what are the assumptions that this particular operator is using? And so there's a lot of different things that you're looking at, not just to see if the numbers pencil, but, is this a risk that we want to take? Does this line up with what we want to do? And then when we make that decision, we go in and we invest together. What's
been the hardest part of getting this started?
Whew, that's a great question. What's been the hardest part of getting this started? Believing that people will buy into the vision.
How have you dealt with that, though?
Yeah,
How have you dealt with
literally, when I
skepticism?
started, 2023 is when I had the vision, and it was the beginning of 2023, and I was just kind of, I believe God drops these thoughts in my head, and it's just like, what if a group of my peers understood that we could own that, and it was like, okay, like you could tell your peers, and you could own that, And so I brought a group of 50 professionals that I know across the valley into a room. They all showed up. I told them what I was doing and they bought in. And I said, do we continue to do this every month? And I didn't know what I was creating at that time, and I just kept bringing in professionals and talking about tax advantages and how you can utilize and leverage different, vehicles and, all the different elements so that people could see it holistically. I knew people wouldn't buy in if they didn't. If you don't understand something, you're not going to invest, right? And so I wanted people to have no barriers to understanding and being educated. And we did that for a year. I was reviewing deals for a year, nothing penciled. And then finally a deal came about and it was like, all right, we're going to do this now. Let's put our money where our mouth is. And people jumped in. We raised over $1 million to invest in our first multifamily asset. And
tell me more about the first investment.
In the sense of like
the $1 million, where'd you put it?
Into the investment, right?
Yeah,
So
where was it?
Rehab, and it was a group of probably 20 or so individuals that came together
wow.
and to invest in a 94 unit building in Arizona.
Oh, huge.
Yeah. And you part of that money. So the bank comes in with a piece. There's a portion that's down payment and then goes to capital expenditures. What are we going to do with the asset? The rehab, we want to turn 2 bedrooms into 4 bedrooms. We want to put washers and dryers and all the different things that add to that. So it's all a part of the business plan that you're presenting out. And then with commercial real estate, it's based upon the net operating income. It's not about the appreciation in the area. So it's looked at a little bit different than residential real estate. And so you can kind of predict where the numbers are going to go based upon how you're going to drive the income at that property and improve it. So
it's looking more at future versus like your present appraisal.
Right. Exactly. It's really where the net operating income, that's how value is determined on that net operating income. And so you're just driving that. And so, I mean, it's one thing to take it down, and then it's a whole nother thing to manage it all the way through fruition. It's usually a 5-year plan. And you know, I got a group of great general partners that we meet every week to talk about how we're continuing to move the plan forward. And once again, nothing goes according to plan, right? Like you're constantly having to pivot to figure out, hey, how are we going to bring these returns that we made to our investors?
You mentioned $1 million for your first investment. People listening might say, well, that's still a huge number. What was your minimal investment, say, per person? Was it the same for everybody?
$50K. People invested more, but $50K was the min. We've had a couple deals now, or one deal now, that we've allowed people to put in $25K, because I want to make sure that, you know, if people want to dip their toe in the water, they can dip it and kind of see kind of how it goes before they kind of, you know, feel like they have to make a huge leap. And
what kind of returns can they expect?
Anywhere from like a 15% to 25% average rate of return.
Wow.
Yeah, year
that's
over year.
Huge.
Yeah.
That's a lot better than my stock portfolio, by the way.
And it depends, right? Like what people want. If they want cash flow, they would invest in a different type of deal. If they want kind of this equity, you know, just net appreciation, net worth growth, equity growth, then they're going to go into kind of more of those types of deals. So, you know, it just depends on what people want. And that's kind of, you know, the types of opportunities that I look for when I'm thinking about what's the next deal that we want to do.
You've mentioned kind of giving back to community and your faith. How has that guided you through this process of entrepreneurship? Because some people don't think of those things going together. How has that kind of changed the way you think about doing business? Yeah,
I mean, faith is everything for me. I think that's kind of where I am. I think after the first time I was laid off, I had a pretty dramatic incident at my house. I was assaulted. And it was in that moment where I realized that, like, my life could have been gone. And it was me believing that and trusting God that I was going to make it through. And I started to see in that moment the power of my faith and just trusting and believing in what I do. And so it shifted kind of how I moved through the earth, if that makes any sense, of if kind of God tells me it's possible, I'm like, it's possible. I move forward like it's so, right? So I don't allow, and it's conversations, right? So people do affirmations, and I believe in the power of affirmation. I believe in the power of really, you have to be the thing before you do the thing, if that makes any sense. So a lot of people want to have what they want to have, but if your mindset hasn't transformed, you're just going to keep doing what you truly believe, right? So it's like, for me, my mindset shift is like, when I know I can have something, then you start doing the thing that you know you can have, right? And it's really just, it's a mindset shift, I guess, and that's what started the journey of me really doing the personal development, doing the work, and it's been a journey, right? And so every time I've hit another, like, oh, this another success, it's really been a mindset shift.
Did you feel like that assault impacted you in a way that made you fearful of doing anything? Like, did it change? I just feel like as women, there's a way that we think about where we go, like parking garages and
right, absolutely.
And I haven't had anything specifically happen to me, and I already do that. How did that change you?
Yeah. I say because in the moment, my mind was focused on what was possible, if that makes any sense, in the moment. Afterwards, being alone at night and things like that, outside, going to my car, it was a little bit, I had to get over that. And so there was a little shift there. But being in the moment of having two men in your home, being held at gunpoint, being tied up and locked into a closet, and figuring out how, like, am I going to live, period. But the concept of me not making it through was, I just kept my mind in a space of, I was praying, and I kept my mind in a space of, I'm going to make it through this.
Was this in one of your rental properties or your home?
This was one of my homes. And my home is, I always buy it, move into it, and then rent it. And so I was in the process of moving out of this particular home and about to rent it again. And all of that happened. And it once again, it's kind of a surreal experience because you're like, wow, this is happening. All of it's happening fast. You're like, I was driving into my garage. It was late at night. I didn't know all of these things were going to happen to me. But in that moment, it was just like, all right, God, it's on you. And I just went through a round of personal development classes and things like that. So it was just like, okay, I'm putting you to the test. So I'm just going to believe. And so as they attempted to like rape me and do different things, it was just like, nope, I'm coming out of this. And as my mind shifted and as my prayers shifted, it was like, you're kind of like watching like, okay, this is like, I'm making it through. You know what I mean? And so every moment it was just, and so like I said, it was just a shift, a small shift, literally a small shift. And it really helped to just transform, like I said, how I show up. So it was like, well, if you could do that and you could get me through that, then you can get me through anything. And that whole year, because it was a Great Recession happening and I'm starting a business in the Great Recession, I'm literally like watching all these things happen to me. And I'm just like, when the 50 grand went, right? We talk about our biggest mistake. I was like, I'm still okay. It's like you're stripped of everything and you're just like, you're still keeping me. I'm still okay. And then you realize, well, then it's not about my titles. It's what I bring to the table. And God was really in that moment showing me everything that I brought to the table without nothing to my name, right? I still have my houses, but equity was dropping, right? Nothing in my bank account. And I understood more about the value of what I brought to the table. And it was like, I don't have to have anything to bring to the table in order to be of value.
But I think a lot of people, having gone through all of that in the course of a year,
for sure,
would have actually lost their faith.
Quite
Why
possibly.
didn't you?
It's a good question. Because he was bringing me through it. I watched him bring me through it. It started with, you're supposed to learn something through every challenge that you go through, right? And so some people, it's like, I have to go through, this impactful thing. And for me, it's like, it's almost like, okay, what am I supposed to learn? I always switch it. I'm like, what am I supposed to learn through this, God? What am I supposed to be taking away from this experience? So for me, I started the podcast, Lessons into Blessings, like, okay, if I'm going through this experience, I'm supposed to learn something from it. And it's only going to make me better. So I'm a believer of, if we go through spaces where we're frustrated or where, we can't figure something out, okay, you kind of got to surrender it and just like, it's bigger than me. Let me let it go. When you start to let things go, sometimes when we control things too much, we lose more control, if that makes any sense. It's sometimes you got to let things go to really actually regain control, because now you're calm. You're in a space where you can actually like really reflect on what you're supposed to reflect in that moment. And so for me, like every lesson has every trial that I've gone through, it's transformed my life. And when I'm in frustrating moments, I'm like, okay, what are we supposed to be learning through this? When I want to get to the point where it's like, why me? Why not me? People go through trials, right? Like that's part of life. How can I make this work in my favor, if that makes any sense? And so it's just, once again, just how you're approaching what is coming at you and what's experiencing your life. And because I lost my car, I totaled my car in that year, so I had to ask for help. I totaled 2 cars in that year. When I say it was like, what is going on? And it was just like, okay, life, come on, let's go.
Bring it.
Let's go. Bring it, exactly. And I had gotten to that point where it's like, okay. And what it helped me to do is I was so independent, right? So what was the lesson in that? I had to ask for help. I had to ask people, can I borrow your car? You know how I had to put my pride on the table. Well, I had to get over shame. I had to get over what people would think. I had to get over people's opinions. Shame holds us back so much. Rejection holds us back so much. There's certain things that we've got to get to a space where I'm not going to let anything, that's true freedom, right? When I'm not going to let anything stop me from operating in what I know I have the ability to achieve. And when you get to that point where you are truly free, you can move any way you want, achieve anything you want, period. I don't care what it is.
Just speaking personally, I think asking for help is so incredibly difficult.
Absolutely.
Why is it so hard for so many of us?
Pride. We think it's like humble because it's like, oh no, I don't need any help. It's pride. Like, I don't want to look like I need the help, and like we're better when we have help. And it took me a long time, and still to this day, I still have to fight that spirit of like, no, ask for help. Like, it's out there. And the moment I asked, I think I sent a message to my whole sorority and to like a couple, boom, help came.
And that's the thing that people don't realize. People want to help more than the person who needs help realizes.
Absolutely. You know what a friend told me once? She was like, Tari, I want to help you, and you're not accepting my help. Like, it's almost like you're taking something away from me. Just like you like to help people, help others, and it's a gift to you, then you're robbing me of my gift of helping you. And I'm like, ooh, wow, I never really saw it that way. You think you're taking something from somebody, but people want to give as much as you want to give. So why are you robbing them of that joy to be able to bring something to your life?
That is so true. Mm-hmm. So you wrapped up a disastrous year starting two business, a successful corporate career, and you are sitting on the other side, and you are being such an inspiration to so many different people. We're going to move into mixtape.
Okay.
This is where I'm going to rapid fire you a few questions.
Okay.
And there's no wrong answers.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
Okay. You're in a different season of your life now.
Amen.
What is the song that you would use to characterize where you are today?
This girl is on fire.
I love it.
I think because I fully owned who I am. And so it's like, when you step into that and you just like are free, it's just like, you can't stop me. You know what I mean? So I think that song.
I might require every guest to sing instead of tell me. They're not going to sound as good as you, though, unfortunately.
Right.
That's the problem.
I don't have a voice, by the way. I don't have a voice.
Well, that one line, you killed it.
That was about all I could give you. Let me just tell you, I stopped right on time.
So while you're singing, we're at a dinner party.
Okay.
And you can invite anybody you want to invite. And it can be alive or dead. There's no limitations. Oof. Who's coming to break bread with you?
Trevor Noah. Love
That's a good one.
I mean,
legend.
Still single. Maybe he's an option. I don't know. But he's just...
Trevor Noah, if you're out there.
Right, that part. Here's my shot. Woo! All right. So Trevor Noah, Josh Johnson, they're both like the political humor and they're just phenomenal. So maybe the two of them. You got to add some spiritual people in there and mindset people. Anita Phillips, she wrote the book, The Garden Within. Another person I follow is Dr. Darius Daniels, just really good spiritual mindset, business. They're also business people, so I kind of follow them. Strong women. We got to throw some strong women in there. Michelle Obama, obviously, would be.
She is not the first. She's invited to quite a few dinner parties.
I'm sure she is. I think her dinner ticket is. She's probably the high request out there.
Yeah, she is
for sure. But now she's got her own podcast. She's just phenomenal to watch. She's just a beautiful woman. And, maybe somebody from the past, probably my grandmother. I feel like.
Oh, I love that.
Now that I'm older, I had such, one of the most beautiful women in my life, at the time. I lost her when I was in college. But now that I'm older, I wish she could tell me stories of, how, what her life was like. Because now I watch my mom and I watch, my family, and I'm like, I like to see what things that are in me that are because of the blend of just the generations before me. And so I think there's a lot I get from her. And so it would be cool to kind of, now that I'm older, I can ask her all those questions.
Yeah, that's the ignorance of youth. We don't realize the stories that they hold until later.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, last question, Tari, before we celebrate you. What would you tell 25-year-old Tari now? What advice would you impart on her?
25-year-old Tari. Well, 25-year-old Tari wanted to be a millionaire at 30. So I was pretty ambitious. But what would I tell 25-year-old Tari? Like, it's okay to take time. You're more powerful than you realize. You got this, you know? I was ambitious, but I was ambitious in the wrong ways, if that makes any sense. And so now I'm just so more deliberate and intentional. And I was then, but just in a different way. I think I was hungry for the wrong things. And now it's just like, impact is so important to me now. And so just, it's like, it's not about the money, Tari. It's about just what you get to leave in this earth. And so, yeah, I just tell her, just be okay with, it doesn't have to look the way you want it to look, you know, and you're gonna experience some chinks in the journey and be okay. You're still gonna become exactly what you need to become.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, then we're going to celebrate you here with a little clink to the brink.
Lovely.
We're gonna have a little
lovely. The
champagne.
clink to the brink. I like it.
Well, I'd like to take credit, but other brilliant minds were at work on that one.
That's too funny.
And I would just like to say publicly that I know you're drinking this for me, but and I appreciate your dedication to the pod.
It's okay. We're going to do a nice little sip, and it's going to be good.
Cheers to you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. You were amazing.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be in wonderful women company.
Oh, I agree.
Tiny steps when the mountain feels endless. I'm right here when you're feeling small.